take for you to get used to Jesus doing miracles if you were one of the disciples? How long do you think it would take before it was just like a thing that happened? You know, the first one's like, whoa! And the next one's like, whoa! And the next one's like, yeah, he does that a lot. And I don't think it would take very long. We could say all day it would take us a while. Because I would stay in awe all the time. I don't think it would take very long. Brittany and I generally don't go to the grocery store together. We still don't do that. Now with Walmart Plus, we don't go to the grocery store at all. Well, that's not true. I go to the grocery store a lot on the way home. But this one time, for whatever reason, we went to the grocery store together in Columbia, and we took the kids, which is another thing we don't do. Like, I know some of you are great parents and your kids know about the toy section at Walmart. Our kids had no idea there were toys there until grandparents ruined everything and told them. So we go to Walmart and we got 3 kids in the cart. And I don't really remember exactly what was happening, but Britt was ahead of me, like pretty far ahead of me. We'd just walked into Walmart, and one or two of the kids were behind, and I had Beck in the cart, and I was looking at something and saw us pretty far back close to the door. And I hear somebody scream from the front door, "My baby, somebody help my baby." And I look, and there's a woman holding a kid. It looks like about 3, or a little girl, and she's just limp and blue. And so she's there at the door of Walmart. And I yell across the store, like, "Britt, come here," because I can help in a lot of things, and I can do CPR, but I'd rather her do it. And so I call her, and she runs to the front of the store, sees what's going on, and she ends up doing CPR on this kid in the door of Walmart. Like, the pharmacist walks over and says, "Seems like you got this under control. I'm going back to the pharmacy." And we obviously call 911, and we get the fire trucks show up, and the paramedics are there. And it's a long few minutes from between when that woman screams and when the healers show up to take over. And Britt gets her back, and they take over by the time she gets there. The little girl had a seizure, and a whole thing happened there, so she lived, and it was fine. But this moment that for us and for the mom was a huge deal, like, and that minutes stretch into hours, I was so mad when the paramedics got there. Because these dudes were in no hurry at all. Like, they just strolled in. They're just carrying their stuff, talking back and forth as they walk in. And then they get there, and she's got the girl back to breathing again, and the girl's awake, and they take her off. And it's like, this is just another day for them. And I talked to the head of the Boone County paramedic program, was a member of our church, and I talked to her about it. I told her I was like how frustrated I was that there was no urgency about what they did. And she said, "Yeah, we do this all the time. There's no urgency. Like, we do this all the time." And while on one hand I get it, right, you do that, on the other hand I'm still really mad about it. Because if it's my kid, I want you to run. I don't want you casually walking over here. I want you to run. But when we say, you know what, I wouldn't get used to the miracles, I would still be in awe every time. I think the nature of us is we just get used to it. And we look at the disciples in Mark chapter 6, they seem to be getting used to miraculous things happening. They still like them. It's still fun. It's still cool. But they don't stand in awe anymore. And where we looked at Mark chapter 6 last week, Jesus fed the 5,000 plus women and children. So he fed the 10,000. I'm going to go ahead and give him those numbers. He fed all of those, and there's this whole miracle. And what's important about that is there's the miracle, but before the miracle, Jesus had just gotten them back from their big mission trip where they'd gone out in pairs and they'd done all these miracles all over the place and cast out demons, and they didn't take any supplies with them, and God provided for them moment by moment by moment. And then he brings them into this situation. He says, "We're going to go get some rest," and they go across the lake. And it says across the lake or across the sea a lot, or to the other side. They're generally not going all the way to the other side. They're going up and down the coast to different places, but that's just a turn of phrase that they use. So it says, "We're going to go to a desolate place," which is a place with no cell service, "and we're going to go over here and we're going to preach," or "we're going to take a break over here." And they get over there, and the people see them going and run before they can get there, and there's a crowd there before he can get there. And they're supposed to be going to rest, but it turns into a huge ministry experience and a miracle and a ton of work. I want to point something out to you about this real fast, okay? And this is back several weeks ago. I just want you to think about this a little bit. And if you weren't here several weeks ago, I'll catch you up just a little bit ago. You remember when Jesus went across the sea another time and he parked his boat at the graveyard? You remember that? He went to the place called the Gadarenes or the Gerasenes. It means the gardens. It's where he's there. He went there, and there was a guy in the garden that had a legion of demons. Do you remember that? And he cast out the legion of demons, and the guy was like clothed and in his right mind for the first time. And the people's response, you remember what the people's response was? Please leave. You are upsetting our world. Please leave. The guy wanted to go with him. Said, hey, I want you to go with me. I want to go with you, and I don't want to stay with these people that locked me up in the cemetery because I was having a hard time. You know, I want to go with you. And Jesus said, no, I want you to stay. And what it says about him, and that's Mark chapter 5, is that he went and preached all over a region called the Decapolis. That's a region of 10 cities, and there's some interesting stuff about them. But it's the Decapolis, and he went and preached. And those people said, please leave, and Jesus left that region. When Jesus goes back to the desolate place to feed the 5,000, do you know where he's at? He's back in the Decapolis. And now the largest crowd that he's ever dealt with is there. Now, who do you think it was that told everybody about Jesus over on that side? Who do you think it was? The guy that Jesus said to stay there. Anyway, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about today. I just really like it. Jesus takes them over there, and he feeds the 5,000. He's got a couple of pieces of bread and a couple of pieces of fish, and he turns it into enough to feed everybody until they're completely full, and then he has 12 baskets of food left over. That's where we finished up. And if that happened to me, like, that blows my mind. That's all I'm talking about for weeks, right? But the disciples are so used to this that it really, it's like it's super cool, but it doesn't really make an impact on them. And that's where we get to in Mark chapter 6, starting in verse 45, where we're at today. It says, immediately. I'm trying to figure this out. I can't figure it out. But throughout the book of Mark, the word immediately is used a bunch of times. Like Mark's, nobody beats around the bush in Mark. It's like, immediately we're going to do this. And I don't understand why. But one day I'll figure it out and I'll tell you. Immediately, he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. We're not talking about the other side of the lake. He's not going across the widest part, but they're going around a few miles down the coast to another spot. Bethsaida is a town in the Decapolis where they're at. So he made them get in the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. Now, they needed some rest, right? Jesus said to them, you've been on this long trip, you've been doing a lot of stuff, you need some rest, so I'm going to give you some rest. They didn't get it. And now that this ministry opportunity is over, he says, I'm going to give you some more, I'm going to give you another opportunity for rest. You go ahead on your relaxing boat trip down the sea to the next spot. I'm going to stay here and close everything down. I'm going to dismiss everybody. It's very nice of Jesus to do that. He dismissed the crowd and got everybody to go. And if you think dismissing a crowd is as easy as saying, y'all go home now, you should hang around here and see what time I leave. We don't have anywhere near 10,000 people. After he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. Now, this is another thing that I've been fixated on this week, and it, again, is not really about the sermon, but it's something that I just want you to think about, and whenever I figure out exactly what the answer is, I'll tell you. Do you think Jesus was any less tired than anybody else that was involved? You think he was any less tired than these other guys? Like, they're tired because they did this for 3 weeks or 6 weeks. Meanwhile, he's been doing this for, since the beginning of his ministry, whenever that was. You think he's not tired? But you know what he does? When it says that they're tired, he takes them off to a desert place to get them to rest. But it never mentions Jesus being tired. And I think the reason is because when Jesus was tired, his response was not just, let's take a day off, let's lay around and watch TV. His response was to go off by himself and spend time in prayer. And it never says Jesus got tired and took the day off. But every time somebody else is tired, what is Jesus doing? He goes off by himself to pray. Think about the garden at the Garden of Gethsemane. Whenever Jesus is there, it's the middle of the night. He's getting ready for the worst day of his life. He's getting ready for the crucifixion. The disciples are all tired and they keep falling asleep. Do you think he's not tired? But where does he get his rest from? He says, can you not sit with me for 1 hour? He gets his rest from time with the Father. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. And he saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. So Jesus is up on a mountain. He's talking to God, getting his rest that way. They are out resting on their relaxing boat cruise that has turned into quite a bit of work, because they were trying to get their rest from somewhere else, and that turned into an actual drain on them instead of restfulness. He's up on the mountain. They're on the boat. They're trying to get where they're going. It should have just been a few miles down the coast, but instead, the wind is against them and fighting against them, and the wind is up. And this isn't a big storm. Like a couple of chapters ago, we had a big storm where it was that retelling of the story of Jonah. Like their boat's about to break apart and Jesus is asleep on the cushion. This isn't one of those. It's just the wind is up and making it really hard for them to do something that should be really simple. He sees them, that they're making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. And about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them, but when he saw them walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost. When they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. 4th watch, that's between 3 and 6 a.m. What is that difference does that make to our story? They thought they were going to go down the coast a couple of miles and get a good night's sleep. And now the thing that should have been an easy trip while he stayed behind to do the work, it's now 3 to 6 o'clock in the morning, and they have still not made it to where they're trying to get to. And Jesus came to them walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them. All right, I've never liked that. Like the idea that he intended to do something but was unable to do it, or he intended to do something and they thwarted it. It's always bothered me. So I looked into that to see what it actually meant. And what the people that are better with languages than I am talk about is like this phrasing has a lot of mystery in it. Like the sense of it is that he's setting something up. So it's not that he said, I'm going to get ahead of them because I don't want to hang out with these guys anymore, so I'm going to get there early. So I'm going to sneak past them like, oh, they got me. Now I got to talk to them. What he was doing is he was trying to get past them to position himself so that they would see him at the right time. He meant to pass by them until the point that they would see him at the right moment. Because I want you to think, have you been on a boat at night? Right? We watch TV and like at nighttime it's just slightly less bright than it is during the daytime. And you're like, you can still see everything pretty well. But when you're actually on a boat at night, it is dark. Like you don't see things. You can't see anything. And maybe you catch something in the moonlight. Maybe something else is going on. You're able to make something out. So what Jesus wants is he wants to get to a point where they all see him at once. And so what he does is he's sneaking around the boat to get to where they'll all see him at once because he wants to make an entrance. So he like creeps along trying to get up around to the right spot ahead of them and position it just right. And then when he gets to that spot, he just kind of starts walking confidently so that they'll all see him at the same time. They see him walking on the sea and say, it's a ghost. Which happens a lot, actually, that they're like, oh no, it's a ghost. Remember whenever Jesus, after the resurrection, Jesus comes to meet them, he's like, hey, touch me, see that I'm not a ghost. Right? See that I'm not a ghost. When Peter is arrested later on after Jesus ascends to heaven, Peter's arrested and the whole church is gathered together there having prayer that Peter get released, and then Peter gets released by God, and he comes and knocks on the door, and the girl opens the door and is like, it's Peter, and slams the door and runs back inside to tell everybody. And they're like, no, it's just his ghost. Like this happens a lot. I don't know why. But they see him and they're like, it's a ghost. And I kind of get that a little bit. I don't understand that always going to a ghost. But I don't expect to see Jesus walking on water if I don't know about this story beforehand. I've never seen him do it before. I've never seen anybody else. And you got to remember too, it's dark. It's not like it's well lit. Like this isn't The Chosen where it's well lit and you can see what's going on. There's just a shape on the water. And they yell, it's a ghost. For they all saw him and were terrified, which is reasonable. But immediately he spoke to them and said, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. Now, this is actually not really a good translation of this. He says, take heart, it is I. It is I, that's not what he says. He says, I am. So why do they translate it is I? Because that doesn't make any sense for you to say, take heart, I am. You say, take heart, it is I. So they translate it in a way that makes sense grammatically. And, I mean, it's true. Like, hey, don't be scared. It's not a ghost. It's just me. But there's a reason that he says, take heart, I am, and not take heart, it's me. Chill out, it's just me, guys. There's a reason he says that. In Exodus chapter 3, Moses meets God for the first time. And we look at this and we just kind of assume they all know who God is. We assume they have a relationship with God. But after hundreds of years of being slaves in Egypt, they have given up on God and they're not really even talking about him anymore. And when God meets with Moses, he says, Moses, I'm the God of your ancestors. You're going to go and you're going to free my people. And Moses is like, yeah, sure. Just real quick, who do I say you are? Because I wasn't aware we had a God. We've been slaves for a long time, and it seems like if we had a God, we wouldn't be slaves. So who do I tell them sent me? God says to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, he says, I am who I am. The Hebrew word is Yahweh. And he says, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am who I am. I am that I am. You can also say it, I will be what I will be. And that's his name. I am that I am. And then he doesn't just say it that. It's not just that Yahweh is I am that I am. This is not two pieces of words that you put together that makes that. But he says, this is the new word for me. I am that I am. I will be what I will be. And then when he says the instructions, he says, he doesn't say, tell them I am who I am has sent you. He says, tell them I am has sent me. What is I am what I am? I am that I am. I am what I will be what I will be. What does that mean? It means I exist. They had forgotten who he was. And he said, first thing you need to know about me is that I exist. It's not just that I exist, but I have always existed since before everything else, and I always will exist. I am means I exist. It means that I am the same. I am what I am. I will be what I will be. I am the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's who I am. The one who does not change. Everyone else changes, but I do not change. But this is the one that kind of blows my mind a little bit to think about this. It means that I am in the present at all times. So, God is never in the past. His perspective is never in the past. His perspective is never in the future. But His perspective is always in the present because He exists outside of time. I am in the present right now. That means that God at this moment is in this present moment, active and participating. God is also with Moses at the burning bush, active and participating right now because He is always in the present. He is shaping Adam out of dust in this moment in the present because there is no past, there is no future, there is God in this present moment. You say, how can God be so confident that we can trust Him? How can God be so confident that things are going to work out? Because He knows in this moment what He is doing in the next moment because it is the present for Him. How does He know what will happen, what's going to happen down the road? Does He have just these ability to see in the future and understand what's going to happen in the future? No, He exists as Himself, the same person in the future. How do we know that He will defeat Satan? Because He is defeating Satan right now in a moment to us that is in the future, but for Him is in the present right now. I am, I exist, I am the same, I am present, I am in the present. So I want you to think about this. He says, take heart, I am. What's He doing? He is claiming to be the I am. Because if you weren't, you don't say it that way. He does this several times throughout the gospel. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. He says over and over again, I am the doorway. I am the path. I am. And when he steps outside of just regular language and says something weird like this, that doesn't make a whole lot of grammatical sense, it's not that he just likes to, throw curveballs every once in a while. It is that he is claiming to be the I am, who is with Moses, who is with Abraham, who is with Adam and Eve, who is with David, and is the same one who is with us right now. I am. Take heart, I am. But he's not just saying, hey guys, think about this. Exodus chapter 3, that's my name, so that's me. We're the same guy. That's not what he's saying. There's more to it there. And if you want, here's what you can do. If you want, you can view this as, hey guys, I'm not a ghost. Chill out. You can view it that way, and it's accurate. But if you'll go a little bit deeper, here's what I want you to think about. When he says, take heart, he doesn't say don't be scared. He uses an idiom here that can use lots of things. It can mean take heart. It can mean don't be scared. But it can also mean be encouraged. It can mean don't give up. It can mean keep going. It can mean keep enduring. Why? Because I am. These guys are in a scary moment, and you can look at it on the surface. They're in a scary moment. They're in a tired moment. There's a ghost. There's a whole lot of things, and you can look at it right there, and there's just the comfort for the moment. Guys, don't be scared. I'm not a ghost. It's me. But if you'll go a little bit deeper, this will make you want to get a tattoo, okay? Like, this will make you want to, you just put this right here. Take heart. They're tired. You're tired. They're discouraged. You're discouraged. They want to quit. Because when you've been rowing the boat all night and you're already tired, you want to quit. And there's some of you that are ready to quit. You ready to quit on your marriage? You ready to quit on serving the way that God has called you to serve? You're ready to just give it up? And just like they were. But he says, take heart. Be encouraged. Be confident in what you're doing. Don't give up. Why? Because I'm not a ghost. Because I'm about to get in the boat. Because I'm there and it's all going to work out fine. Because I am. Not because it's all going to work out pretty, but because no matter how it works out, I am. I exist in this moment, and the next moment, and the next moment, the next moment, and I will care for you and take care of you, and regardless what happens in this moment to you, I am. Be encouraged. Take heart. Don't give up. Why? Because I am. Not because I'm in the boat, not because I'm with you, not because everything's going to be pretty and happy and fine, but because I am. And I see what happens in this moment, in the next moment, in the next moment, and I don't just see them, but I'm actively working in those moments to work all things together for good for those that love me and are called according to my purpose. I am. Take heart. I am. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're going through, there is no promise that it'll work out the way that you want it to. There's no promise that it will end in happy, good times. But there is a promise that no matter what happens in that moment, He is. He got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased. And they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. Can you imagine sitting through the loaves and the fishes and it just not making an impact on you? Just being numb because you're so tired and you're so frustrated and you've already seen so much that you just don't get it. Now, Mark is the only one that says this. We're going to look at what another one says just to see this. Mark is the only one that says this, but he says the reason they didn't get this was because their hearts were hard. Their hearts were hard. Now, I want to show you something in Matthew chapter 14, though. Matthew 14 tells the same story, but he tells it a little bit different. He talks about Peter getting out of the boat and walking on the water. Mark doesn't include that. I think one of the reasons that Mark doesn't include that is because, again, I think Peter wrote it, and I don't think he wanted to brag and or reveal that specific piece about himself. But when Matthew writes it, he tells the story of Peter getting out of the water. And then what he says about what they do when they get the boat is a little bit different. He says, those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So what is it? Were their hearts hardened and they didn't get it? Or do they worship and say, "You are the Son of God"? Is this a conflict? Is this an error between the two? Well, let's go back and look at what Mark said. Mark said they did not understand about the loaves because their hearts were hardened. So what's happening here? What's happening here is they were so numb and they were so tired and their hearts were so hardened that when Jesus is doing miracles and they're doing miracles, they don't get it. But God had to do something to break through that hardness of heart. He had to do something to smash through, to get them to see, to get them to understand. And this was it. They got what happened on the water. They were in awe about what happened on the water. But he had to walk on the water to get them to see because he had just done this amazing miracle and they couldn't get it. But he broke through their hard hearts by walking on the water. What's a hard heart? What is that? I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit by a couple of chapters. I'm going to tell you because Jesus is going to tell us what a hard heart is in Mark chapter 8. Verse 17, he's talking to the Pharisees. And he says, "Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember?" Jesus tells us there's three things about a heart that a hard heart will do. A hard heart will prevent you from seeing what's going on around you. A hard heart will prevent you from hearing what's happening. A hard heart will prevent you from remembering what it is that God has done. And I'm going to throw in a fourth one there just because I'm up here. A hard heart will keep you from understanding the things that you've seen, heard, and remember. A hard heart will keep you from understanding. And these guys, what's going on with them? They're seeing the miracles. They're hearing the teachings of Jesus. They remember all this, what's happening, but they're not understanding. And they keep moving from spot to spot to spot, and they don't get it. And they don't get it, and they don't get it until God does something to smash through their hard hearts and to get them to understand for the first time who He is and what He's doing. Now here's the thing. They have an excuse for having a hard heart. We're told throughout the Gospels that God specifically limits their ability to understand until the very end. Right? Whenever Jesus says, "Who do they say that I am?" Like some say you're Elijah, some say you're a prophet. He says, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." And what Jesus says is, "Peter, you didn't figure that out on your own. The Father has revealed it to you." Because at this time, God was limiting what people could understand. And we look at these stories and we look at these miracles and we're like, how could they just not get it? How could they not get it? God was specifically limiting their understanding for a while until the work was done. And then He opened their eyes so that they could understand. They had a hard heart, but it wasn't their fault. Why is your hard heart? They had an excuse because God was saying, "I don't want you to understand yet until this is done. And when this is done, when the picture's complete, then I'm going to open your eyes to understand." And from that point, our eyes have been opened. So why is it that we see God work in people's lives and it makes no difference to us? Why is it that we hear the Word of God preached? We open up the Word of God for ourselves and read it. And it makes no difference. Why is it that we forget so quickly what God has done? Do y'all remember? Y'all remember, I don't know how long it's been ago, year and a half ago, I was thinking about this earlier, when we were praying desperately for Cooter. Do y'all remember that? Pancreatic cancer. That's bad cancer, y'all. You don't remember that? And we would come up and we would have prayer. We would talk about it all the time and we would have prayer. And then they go to the doctor. And the doctor says, no more monkeys jumping, sorry. I couldn't help it. The doctor says, I don't understand it and I can't explain it, but that cancer is gone. Y'all remember that? If I saw miracles, I mean, like I'd be, all the time, like I would be. And yet we still struggle to trust Him. We forget. That was the thing that happened, that we all sat here and we prayed and we put our hands on Him and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed and God moved. And are we any different? Is our trust any different? You hear the Word of God, you see God move, and then you move on and you forget about it. My heart's not hard. It's not me. I'm very receptive to the Word of God. We can do this. Let me ask you a question. Are you any different spiritually than you were last year? Some of you. For a lot of us, we are identical to who we were last year. Why is that? Why is that? Well, a year's not that long of time, we got a lot going on, it's not that time. Okay, are you any different than you were 5 years ago? Are you any different than you were 10 years ago? If you continue to see and you continue to hear and you can remember what God has done, but you are the same that you were, you have a hard heart that needs to be softened. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions here. Like, yeah, I'm definitely different. You remember the beginning of the year? It is now August. Halfway through August, 8.5 months ago, at the beginning of the year, we had a challenge called the 112 Challenge. So we had 112 people that were actively attending this church. And I challenged that 112 people would do 5 things. 112 people would share the gospel one time this year. 112 people would invite one person into our family here. That 112 people would consider whether they're involved in this church in the way that they need to be, and that 112 people would be actively involved in one of our small groups, spending that time together to get to know each other better, to carry those burdens together. I asked 112 people to consider your giving and say, are you giving what God has called you to give? And we threw out a challenge and we said to God, show us that you're willing to work. God, show us that we're being good stewards of what you've given us, and send us people to steward well. And we asked for 112 first-time guests. God has done His part. We've said, God, trust us with more. And He's sent us more than 200 first-time guests this year. But go out there and look and see how many of us have shared the gospel one time this year. Go out there and see how many of us have invited one person into our family. And when you look at the sharing of the gospel, understand that there's a few people carrying a big part of the load. I'm not saying, hey, you've got a hard heart. You've got a hard heart. You've got to deal with this. I'm asking you to evaluate yourself. Are you any different? Is there any evidence that you have changed at all, that what you have seen has made a difference in your life and in your heart? Or do you have a hard heart? And everything that God does just bounces right off of it. Everything that you see just bounces right off of it. Everything that you hear bounces right off of it. Everything that you remember makes no difference. Evaluate yourself. And answer the question for yourself. Those disciples, man, if I saw 12, throw a little bit of Minecraft lunchbox, and now we got 12 baskets, and there's all this food and all this fish. If I saw that, man, that would just change my life. If I saw demons cast out, that would just change everything for me. If I saw people healed, that would just change everything for me. Would it? Would it? If you ask yourself these questions and you say, you know what, I'm pretty concerned. And I don't want to talk about anybody else, talk to it to anyone else. Talk about it to anyone else. There's the words. I don't want to talk about it to anyone else, but I'm pretty concerned that I've got a hard heart. And the reason God is not doing anything in my life is not about Him not being faithful to work. It's about the fact that He's trying to do things and I keep letting it bounce right off of me. I want to point you to two verses. Psalm 139, 23, and 24. And I want to encourage you, if you are concerned that you have a hard heart, I want to point you to this. Psalm 139, verse 23 and verse 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Let me warn you something. If you make these verses your prayer, it is going to be a painful experience. I'm telling you, I'm warning you right now. You make this your prayer, it will be a painful experience. Because if you invite God to do something He wants to do anyway, He's going to do it. Search me, Lord. Show me what's going on inside of me because I can't see for myself and I'm concerned that I have a hard heart. Search me, Lord, and know my heart and reveal to me what it is that I am and what it is that I'm doing wrong. Show me my sin. Try me. Test me. Put me through it to show me what it is that I'm doing wrong, where it is that I'm wrong, where it is that I'm stopping you from working in me. Know my thoughts and see if there's any grievous way in me. Show me my sin. Show me the things that are harming me and harming my family and bringing me back. Open those up to me and lead me in the way everlasting. Lead me out of those things. David prayed this prayer. He sang this song and he said, God, I want you to show me what it is that I'm doing wrong. Try me. Help me to understand. Make me who it is that I need to be. I've been doing some marriage counseling for church staffs lately and sitting down with senior pastors and associate pastors and basically doing marriage counseling with them as they struggle to get along or struggle to communicate. And I talked to one of them that I've been talking to and trying to help them work through some stuff. I talked to them the other day, and he said, I sat down and I said to the other guy, like, you've got some problems with me. Just write a list of everything that is that you have a problem with about how I do and what it is that I'm doing wrong and how I can fix things. Make a list. And he said he made the list. And it was a painful, painful process to sit down and read a list from his staff of what he was doing wrong and what they needed from him that he wasn't given. Because it's painful to have somebody point out where you're wrong. It's painful to have somebody point out your flaws. It's painful to have somebody sit down and say these things to you. And for this guy to sit down and do that took a lot of humility. And the thing is, like his staff, not necessarily right about everything. You got to use some judgment on that. But if you say to God, search me and try me, show me how to go and lead me out of this, He will. And it'll be a painful process. But it will break your hard heart. And here's the other thing it'll do. If you're someone that genuinely wants to know God, you genuinely want to grow in God, and you do this, He's going to show you one of two things. He's going to show you that you are a believer and you are doing three things, I guess. You are doing what you need to do. He's going to show you that you are a believer, and He's going to show you that you are not doing what you need to do and you've got a hard heart and you need to step out in obedience to Him. Or He's going to show you that you are not actually one of His in the first place. And the reason that there has been no change in your life, the reason that you are not growing in Him, the reason that things are not getting better when it comes to your spirituality and your service is because you have not placed your faith in Him to rescue you in the first place. That you've been trying to make things better on your own, that you're trying to get right with God by attending church, you're trying to get right with God by obeying the rules. And what He calls you to is a recognition that you can't do those things. That He has to be the one that rescues you. That what you need is to look to Him and cry out to Him as that person that's in the water. We got this dark ship. We got this cruise ship, right? We're going on a cruise recently, and it's all I'm thinking about. And you hear these stories about people just getting so drunk they jump off the cruise ship. And when they jump off the cruise ship, do you want to know what chance of rescue there is? Almost none. Because when you're in the dark and you're in the big water and people can't find you, there is nothing you can do to save yourself. And if you have not placed your faith in Jesus, that is exactly where you are. There is a world of good times right there waiting on you. There is a world of rescue waiting on you, but you cannot do anything to get from the water where you are to up where you want to be. But Jesus will rescue you. Not because of your own participation, not because of your own work, but if you will place your faith in Him and cry out to Him for rescue, He will rescue you from a situation that you can't get out of on your own. And if you pray this prayer, you might just find out that the reason this isn't working is because you have never placed your faith in Him to begin with. So I encourage you to pray this prayer. Pray these verses. You say, well, I don't think I have a hard heart. I don't want to do it. Do it anyway. What would happen if everyone in this room, if everyone in our church said, you know what? I'm going to pray this prayer. I'm going to ask God to search me, to know me, to try me, and show me my sin and lead me where He wants me to go. What would happen in this church? What would happen in your life? What would happen in your family? What would God do in this city if the people of this church would pray Psalm 139, 23, and 24 as our prayer? What would happen? You have a hard heart? I can't answer that question for you. I mean, I can, but I'm not going to. I can't tell you where you are. I can't tell you where you need to be. But there is one who can. And if you will ask Him, He will show you. Are you willing to do it? Now, we don't talk about what we do up here this time, and people come up and pray. And I know we have some people that have no idea what's going on. This is a time that we call a time of response or a time of invitation. And what we do in this time is we invite you to respond to the message. And you can respond right where you are. You can have a time of prayer right there where you are. But we have a policy in this church that no one prays alone. And if you say, I see myself in this sermon, I see my hard heart in this sermon, and I want somebody to pray with me, you can come up here and I'll pray with you. You can come up here and you can get at these steps. You can kneel down at these steps right here, and one of us will come up and pray with you, and you don't have to talk to anybody about anything. But what we invite you to do right now is to respond to what God is saying to you, however you choose to do that. Would you stand with me and pray? Our Heavenly Father, we come before you, and I thank you so much for the hard-heartedness of this men, and not just the hard-heartedness, but that we got to watch you break their hard-heartedness. Because, Lord, they had an excuse for their hard hearts. They had an excuse to not see, not hear, not understand, not remember. Lord, they had an excuse. But we don't. And this is not outside of our grasp, Lord. The understanding, the having the soft heart is not outside of our grasp. But you stand ready and willing to show us what it is that's hardening our heart, to show us what you want to do to soften our heart, Lord. You are ready and available. The only thing that will stop us is us. I ask, Lord, that the people in this room that have heard this message and they look at themselves over the last year, the last 3 years, the last 5 years, the last 10 years and say, you know what? I don't want to admit it to anybody else, but my heart is hard. And I've heard the messages and I've seen God work and nothing has changed. Lord, I ask that they would not sit in the hardness of heart, but rather they would understand what it is that they've done and they would cry out to you to soften their heart, to show you their sin, to show you how they're hardening it so that they might soften into the one that you want them to be. And if there's one here today that's wondering, Lord, why is it that they have never understood this? Why is it that you have never changed them? Why is it that they hear these things and yet they remain the same? And if, Lord, if those people, the reason that they have not changed is because they do not know you, I ask that you would try them and reveal that to them today, Lord. That you would make it really clear that what they need is not just a softened heart, but a new heart. And that they would have the courage and wisdom to accept it, Lord. It's in Jesus' name I pray all these things. Amen.